it gets ever more difficult to sort out fact from fiction.
And I think that that's living in the modern era period. Is that phone number that's calling you a telemarketer? You've got to use your discernment, right? Is it safe to put my information into this website and not that website? I don't know. You got to use your discernment. Are the people you're watching on videos pulling your chain, or are they authentic in what they're saying? It's all discernment anymore. When the facts fail, you have to be able to look at it and say, yeah, that don't make sense to me. Welcome to Unraveling the Unexplained. My name is Kat. I'm a longtime astral traveler and spirit consultant. This is my brother John, who's a longtime fan of the creepy and the paranormal.
Hello, folks.
He has researched case study. He's going to tell me all about it, and then we're going to talk about what we think is actually going on with some of these cases.
All right, then, let's get to it. So, UFOs. Everybody knows about UFOs.
Mm-hmm.
They get spotted all the time, but usually it's like, one person, couple of people, small groups.
Right.
Not often you get mass sightings, like
Right.
huge amounts of people seeing the same thing. And what we're talking about today is basically one of the largest and best known mass sightings of a UFO in U.S. history, and that's the Phoenix Lights. So it was March 13th, 1997. Around 7:30-ish p.m. is when the first report came in, and it wasn't in Arizona, it was actually in Nevada that the first general report happened of somebody seeing a set of lights in the sky.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that first report was reporting a V formation of about 5 lights, although there's also some descriptions of it having not only the 5 lights but 2 smaller lights kind of trailing behind, and even merging and not detaching or undocking from the main formation. Now, these lights were described as being very low to the ground. Most people reported them as being 150 feet up top. The lights were described as large, kind of amber colored, some oval shape, some circular shape, but large and solid, not blinking like plain lights usually do.
Yeah.
And a lot of people described actually seeing an object connecting these lights, kind of a V shape, or some people kind of described it as maybe a more horseshoe shape, but something that's kind of in that curve, and they couldn't see stars in between the connecting lights. But a lot of people described seeing a solid object. The sightings kind of proceeded from there bit by bit. From the first sighting in Nevada at 7:30, the next report was a former police officer who spotted it at around 8:15, crossing over the border of Arizona. And from there, it was seen over Prescott Valley. And then a family man by name of Tim Lloyd. I can't read my own handwriting.
We just talked about this before. As I look at your handwriting, and it looks like, it may as well be Egyptian hieroglyphs.
Yeah, well, him and his family also saw this heading basically towards the Sky Harbor International Airport near Phoenix. And fun witness is famous actor Kurt Russell, who was also an amateur pilot, reportedly saw these while he was flying around the international airport as well.
So we're going into Phoenix, and I think it was Sky Harbor, and there's these bank of lights, 6 lights, in the shape of a triangle going back right over the airport.
So basically around this time, that's 8:30-ish, 8:45 p.m., but it's also around 10 p.m.-ish that various suburbs in Phoenix, people are seeing these big hanging lights, maybe about 7 of them, give or take, that just stay hanging over Phoenix. And that goes until about, maybe 10:30 before those lights eventually fade, at which point, it's thousands and thousands of people. It's estimated around 10,000 people saw these lights, both the ones strung across the city and the one heading southeast. And the very next day, people have called in to police, called in to the governor. Phoenix Councilwoman Francis?
Francis?
No, it's a woman.
Yeah, Francis can be a woman's name.
Well, either way, Barwood. Councilwoman Barwood is the one who started bringing up things in the council meetings about this, because she's the one who got a bunch of calls from people. She basically was trying to get information on, do we know what this is? Tried to call the international airport to be like, hey, we had lights there. What did you guys see? And they saw the lights, but didn't get anything on radar. And I believe she called the Air Force Base that's near Phoenix, trying to get word from them as to what it might be, but she was kind of rebuffed, didn't get any information out of them. Couldn't get much out of the Air Force Base. They just kind of told her, no, we don't know what that's about.
Yeah, they're not in the business of telling people things.
So she started bringing it up in council meetings, trying to get information, and she got mocked heavily for that. Newspapers ran unflattering articles about her. Various people within her peer group were treating her like she was kooky, and generally speaking, she got a lot of pushback for trying to get information on this.
Yeah, unfortunately, the masses ridicule anything that they don't understand and don't want to think about. It's pretty ignorant, but what are you gonna do?
Yeah, and even the governor, Fife Symington, he tried at first to sound like he was going to do an investigation on it, but then quickly backtracked on that out of nowhere.
Yeah, I think sometimes, and this is, again, it's not it's not to say all people, but I think sometimes the men, and especially ones in politics, are a lot more sensitive about being openly ridiculed like that.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that he backed off pretty quick if not wanting people to make fun of him.
Yeah, to the point where he even made fun of the situation by having someone come in a dressed up alien costume.
Yeah, classic, make fun of it yourself. Classic bully behavior, frankly. Make fun of it yourself before someone can make fun of you for it.
Yeah.
That's pretty sad. Well done, Governor.
Although apparently years later he kind of recanted on that and did claim that he saw something himself that night.
This event called Lights Over Phoenix. What did you see?
Well, I saw a huge craft just kind of come right over Squaw Peak. That was, it was just breathtaking. Unquestionably it was a UFO, which means unidentified flying object.
Right, doesn't mean we're being visited.
Well, it's nothing like anything I've ever seen.
And you're an Air Force guy.
Yeah, and a pilot.
Which is why he was curious to look into it himself initially.
Yeah.
Peer pressure.
Yeah, there were a lot of people who saw it, including this Dr. Lynn Kaiti, who was not only witness to that particular event over Phoenix on March 13th, but apparently the day before she saw lights over the city that she recorded and took pictures of within the same general area. The region has had sightings like that before.
Yeah, it's pretty common to have areas out in those the more deserty sort of states. A lot of activity in those areas, New Mexico, Arizona. It's kind of interesting how much strange stuff happens out over deserty landscapes for whatever reason.
I mean, I can imagine it's a big unpopulated region, so if anybody was going to do anything involving air-related stuff, it's a good spot for it.
Right, and generally speaking, unpopulated. I think that also leads to people thinking that it's some sort of military testing, because the military is known to also test things out there, so I think that's kind of the reason that connection is drawn sometimes.
Well, that's sort of where we start getting into the explanations for things, because when it comes to trying to explain the Phoenix Lights, the explanation that eventually became the official one, the Air Force came out and said, oh, we had this Operation Snowbird going on, training flights of A-10s.
Right.
And the claim is that the V-shaped craft that was sawn was actually a formation of A-10s just flying a training route from Nevada down that direction to the other side of Arizona. And that there was a release of signal flares, these long-burning signal flares that can stay in the air apparently for a good length of time, like a good 20 minutes. Attached to parachutes, these flares can burn and just sort of hang there for a good portion of time. Now, the explanation makes a certain amount of sense, since if one looks at videos of military flares of that type being dropped, there is a strong resemblance to the string of lights that was over Phoenix that there is video recording of.
Hey, Sue! Take a look at this.
Oh my God!
Submitted for your approval. What have we got here?
That being said, there has been a bit of a video analysis of those lights. A man by the name of Jim Delatos from Village Labs did software and imaging analysis of the lights compared to, say, flare lights. And while they do look very similar, he did discover that the lights over Phoenix were very consistent and uniform in their light pattern, whereas flares tend to flicker and leave off different levels of light at different times.
Right.
And there's also like different color contrast between the flares and the lights.
I would also have to imagine that once you release something on a parachute and it's free falling, there's also not consistency of formation once that happens. Wind blows around, things happen. Like I imagine it would be difficult for the same consistent V pattern to remain consistent the entire time. That seems unlikely to me.
Yeah, I mean, from what I hear and what I've researched, military plane drops and flares like that usually are pretty good about staying in formation, but not necessarily. It, of course, depends on conditions. But
it could be that it was just a very still night that night.
Yeah. Generally speaking, there is a certain level of sense that would connect those string of lights to flares. That being said, when it comes to the explanation of the V-shaped formation being the A-10s flying overhead, that makes a lot less sense given the sheer number of witnesses who called in scene about this. Like I said, Councilwoman Barwood personally spoke to like 700 people on her phone who'd witnessed this, and none of them described it as planes, a formation of planes, or even suggested that it could be a formation of planes. So it seems kind of hard to... Like, everybody looks up at the night and sees planes. I've seen military planes fly overhead. I've seen commercial planes fly overhead. Those lights are all very distinctive in their pattern and the way they flicker and blink.
Right.
Well, none of them, not a one, looks like a large, solid amber orb. 5 of them in a distinct V formation. Nor does the explanation of A-10s really account for the fact that some people claim they genuinely saw a craft, being connected to these lights.
So in my mind, and again, I'm not a military person, but I would imagine that, yes, commercial flights having all kinds of lights on them. Stealth military flights, probably not. That's not what you want on all of your airplanes that are supposed to be carrying out operations over enemy territories. So I'm not sure there would have been a bunch of lights on a military craft. Now, I don't know that for sure, or at least not operating while you're doing night things, right?
Admittedly, not a military guy myself.
Right.
I don't know what the lights on an A-10 Warthog are supposed to look like,
right,
or if they would have them on during a training exercise.
And it's sounding like what they're saying, that the lights that were seen were not lights from the planes anyway. They were lights from flares that were dropped from the planes.
Yeah, the string of lights were their explanation is flares, and their explanation for the V-shaped formation is the planes themselves. But not only do the lights themselves not feel consistent with what formation of planes would be, a lot of people describe it as a very slow-moving formation of V-shaped lights in a craft. That not only was it low, again, often described as around 100 feet off the ground, but described as moving very slowly. Yeah. Not at all fast.
Sometimes, and I will admit this, is like your ground perception versus what's happening thousands of feet up in the air can be distorted. A lot of airplanes in the sky look like they're moving relatively slowly, but that's usually from great height, right? So, but distance and perspective messes with how you see and perceive things sometimes, and that's fair. You are talking about an awful lot of people who saw it from an awful lot of different perspectives.
Who all describe essentially the same thing.
Who are all describing pretty much the same thing happening. To me, the bigger question is, why would the military be dropping flares over a majorly populated area
for a training exercise?
For some sort of training exercise, like...
It seems a little unusual.
And then where were the flares? If you're dropping flares, where are the flares?
Like somebody would have recovered the flares in the parachute.
Well, again, why would you be dropping flares over a majorly populated area with no... I mean, if you're going to do stuff like that, you do it out over a desert area. I think there's a reason why they do all of that testing out in the desert where there's no population. Generally speaking, they don't run military operations of that nature over major populated areas. They do it out over the ocean, or they do it in
It does seem
the
unusual.
desert. That seems unlikely to me that they would be doing that.
And if this was a routine training operation, sure, there have been descriptions of lights like this being seen in this area before, but none of those were claimed to be training exercises. And how often does this even happen? If you're doing training all the time, wouldn't people see, oh yeah, that's just the string of lights that we get every once a year as they do training operations?
Yeah, as somebody, and you and I both, we grew up right next to Fort Lewis McChord, which is a big military Air Force base out here. And you do see planes fly.
Yeah.
They do run training exercises. You can see them running in lines, doing touch and goes. You can see them sometimes flying off in formation with the smaller jets. They do run training exercises.
And being that I work night shift anyway, I see planes overhead all the time.
Yeah, because we're also right next to the SeaTac International Airport.
Not once have I ever mistaken any of those planes for being a low-flying V-shaped craft.
The weirdest thing that happens living next to a big military installation is sometimes the weird sounds.
The rumbles.
Weird booming that happens if they're firing off the guns over there, sometimes happening at odd hours where you're like, really, is this the appropriate time to be firing off the cannons or whatever the hell that is? You do get weird noises that are kind of that come out from living near a military installation, but formations of, I don't even know what a warthog is. Is it some kind of stealth bomber?
No, the A-10 is a very rugged, large, a ground assault bomber kind of plane.
Okay.
It is in no way a stealthy thing.
So it would have also presumably been loud.
I would assume so, unless I am really, really off in my guess of this knowledge. I don't think the A-10 has a run silent ability. I don't know. Anybody out there who knows military shit, tell me about the A-10.
We don't know. We're not military experts, but we do live next to military bases. Unless they're flying super high up, they do make noise. It does make noise. Planes make noise, unless they're higher altitude or whatever. But.
Yeah. So generally speaking, there was some publicity about this, but it went away relatively quick, especially after the Air Force's explanation came out.
Right.
Now, there are still people who, of course, continue to investigate matters. Like I said, that Lynn Kaite woman who took some of the initial video, she went on to make a book and a documentary about the whole thing. It's possible one of the documentaries you watched was hers.
Yeah, I have seen documentaries about this before, and it's possible that it was one of her documentaries.
Yeah, so it has remained an examined thing, and there is still not really an official, cinched explanation for it. The Air Force has its story about the training exercises, but it's not like that's ever really been proven.
Mm-hmm.
Just that the operation happened. I mean, it seems fairly certain that, yes, there was a training exercise that happened, because since Operation Snowbird is, on the books, as it were, and I think one of the pilots for it years later did an interview where he confirmed he was part of a training flight across Arizona that night. Still doesn't really explain why thousands of people would see the same slow-moving V-shaped formation of amber lights that don't in any way resemble planes.
Yeah, and I mean, and I think we know that the military is not fond of admitting when they don't know something. So, if there was a weird V-shaped formation or whatever flying over a major populated area, it makes sense that that's a panic-inducing level of they're not going to tell you they don't know what it is.
At the very least, they're going to initially do what they can to ignore it and then come up with an explanation later. It's very much like the drone situation over New Jersey.
I think people reach for anything that sounds like something they can understand rather than accepting that there's things we don't understand. That would be scarier. even if the logic's not really there.
Yeah, it's generally more comforting to be like, yes, we know what this is, or at least somebody knows what this is, and it's something mundane.
Right. And this is kind of the case with these Phoenix Lights, I think, is this is not, like you, to your point in the beginning, this is not some, rural farmers saw something in the sky one night.
This was like near 10,000 people.
Right. This is a lot harder to discredit when you have that many people witnessing it. You can't just say he's crazy or was he an alcoholic? Like, was it a barn animal, or a barn owl, or...
And even if you can accept the possibility that there was a training flight of A-10s that night, and even if they did drop flares, that doesn't actually explain why so many people would misidentify a flight of A-10s as a slow-moving, low-flying, V-shaped craft. Those two things don't fully align, unless you're really cocking your head to the side and squinting at it.
Well, and I would be curious to see, what is the military's history of running these completely normal, completely mundane nighttime operations of flying bombers over heavily populated areas and dropping flares on them.
I've even heard some people try to explain it
Like-
as not a UFO or like not an alien craft, but a secret military craft.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, because the military is known for flying their top secret crafts over highly populated areas.
On top of that, this V formation was
Like-
this V formation was described as being about a mile wide.
Yeah.
What the fuck would the military want with a mile wide V-shaped craft that slowly moves 100 feet over the ground?
And you know what? I'm sure they would love to have something like that. I'm sure it has all kinds of capabilities that the military could figure out how to use to cause havoc, right? These are the same people that have tried to use psychics for remote viewing, have trained dolphins. I saw a documentary the other day where they put live chickens inside a nuclear weapon to keep the body heat of the chickens, to keep the functioning working, the mechanism from not freezing, so that it could be buried there to go off later.
Are you fucking shit?
No. So if it exists, if it's
Nuclear
insane,
chicken bomb.
if it's nuclear nuggets, buddy, they've thought of it, they've tried it.
How is it the military can seem so smart about some things, but seem so utterly stupid about other
I'm
things?
sure because they will try anything for supremacy. That's their job. So
Beware, enemies of America, our nuclear chickens are coming for you.
Well, the chickens were just there to keep the mechanism inside
Well, they're
warm.
patriotic chickens. They're going to keep our nukes warm so they can blow up whenever we want them to.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm sure that they've tried it all. I'm sure they've tried to train psychic donkeys to kick Putin at his child's birthday party. I'm sure they have tried literally anything and everything is not off the table with the military. So maybe they built a giant V-shaped Frisbee aircraft. I mean, I don't know. I'm sure they would do that, try that, and see what they could do with it for sure. But what I am sure about is that they would not fly it over a heavily populated civilian area and drop flares on people from
Just
them.
to ensure that everybody's looking up.
That is not what they would do. So again, sometimes you have to follow the logic, even if it's something that you don't fully understand, is the behavior isn't logical, right?
Yeah, my guess is that we have some sort of legit alien and or otherworldly vessel.
Mhm.
Maybe the A-10s were in the air, but maybe it wasn't a training exercise.
The documentary that I watched about it actually said that what happened is there were planes in the air, but the planes were scrambled when the military did catch something
Ooh.
hovering over a fucking...
Those A-10s were maybe in the air because they were chasing something.
They
And the
went-
flares were to attempt to illuminate it.
What actually happened is there was something on the radar hovering over a large American civilian population, and the military didn't know what it was. They did scramble the A-10s, but they did it because they didn't know what was hovering over their large civilian population. Like, what the military doesn't do is it doesn't act weird and creepy dropping flares from secret aircraft over their civilian population. But what the United States military does do is it takes the protection of its civilian population incredibly seriously. So I don't doubt at all that the A-10s were in the air that night.
And would also explain why, one, it took them about 4 months to come out with a training exercise story, and why that story would be there, because they probably wouldn't want to admit that, yes, there was something in the air, we scrambled planes to intercept it, and we lost it, and we don't know what it was.
And it disappeared, and we don't know what it was. We couldn't chase it down. That's not something they want to tell a large panicked population. That's going to increase the panic and the worry about something.
But put out a story that it was a training exercise, military flares dropped, nothing to see here, folks.
There you go. And so that's where the logic sits for me as to what actually happened.
That logic kind of clicks for me, too.
That's what I'm saying, is sometimes you have to follow the strand of logic as to the events, how they unfolded, and what the actions likely actually were. Like I said, our military, not super known for running secret training exercises over major population areas and freaking everybody out. They just don't do that, right? But what they do is take the protection of the population very seriously. So if they had an unknown, unidentified crap on the radar hovering over Phoenix, Arizona, which is a massively populated area, I don't doubt at all that they did scramble the jets and try to get out there and find and run some line of defense or chase it off or something. Because that's not cool.
Yeah, indeed.
As to what it possibly could have been or an explanation, you're right, that's not... We do see V-shaped patterns sometimes. That's been reported in UFO reportings. It's not an uncommon shape to see in some of these sightings.
Nor are amber lights like that.
Right, the amber lights are also very common for people to see in sightings like that. Usually, to your point, things like this are seen in more remote areas. So it is kind of a curiosity as to why. I mean, the same reason that the military wouldn't reveal themselves over a large populated area is kind of the same reason why you would assume aliens don't reveal themselves over a large populated area. So you kind of have to be fair and use the logic conundrum, you kind of have to ask the question in reverse, right? Is why would aliens be doing that? Yeah.
My only response to that would be it's twofold. One is that aliens of any type might not think the same way we do, so their actions might not follow the same train of logic that we would normally use.
Mm-hmm.
The other possibility is that they are using a train of logic that we would use. It's just not a comforting form of logic, because it's the equivalent of two kids stealing their parents' car and going for a joyride.
Well, I mean, I can
somebody
think
acting outside of doing a no-no, basically.
Oh, you mean like some alien decided that they were going to reveal themselves? Somebody was a rogue alien. A rogue alien stole a spaceship and decided to reveal themselves?
If a person can go rogue and do their own thing against the explicit orders or desires of their government, I don't see why an extraterrestrial couldn't do the same thing.
Well, I have a different theory. This is all assuming that the visual, the ability to perceive it, was intentional. For all we know, they hover around and check us out and watch stuff all the time. We just can't always see it or perceive it. And it's possible that for whatever reason, with the atmospheric conditions that night, electromagnetic fields that night, some malfunctioning perhaps in their own technology, maybe their cloaking mechanism was down, right? We're assuming that the visibility factor for them was intentional. And it could very well be that due to some sort of condition or some sort of malfunction on their end, it wasn't necessarily intentional that a bunch of people saw them.
It was an accident.
Right. Maybe they're there more often than we realize they are, and we just can't always see it or perceive it.
And even alien technology every now and then snafus.
Right. If you're going to go the technological route with it, it's possible that something on their end malfunctioned and a whole bunch of people ended up seeing something they weren't supposed to have seen.
Now, on the non-technological route, there is, of course, what we often talk about is the others from not our neck of the dimensional woods, as it were.
Yeah, non-physical that was coming through. And to us, it looks like V-shaped patterns of light or whatever. And again, normally we can't always see that it's there or that we're being perceived or that we are not alone. We just don't see that all the time. Our consciousness, our perception doesn't allow seeing things at that frequency. Usually light doesn't bounce off of energy fields quite that way for us.
Yeah.
And it's possible that whatever the conditions were in that moment over Arizona, and again, could be that for whatever reason, people were more clued into being able to shifting perspective and being able to see it.
Yeah, it would be interesting to figure out what the explanation might be on that end for why so many people would be on that wavelength that particular night.
Right. Generally speaking, when you see these types of things, like you said, you're alone on a dark highway or
It's
out
something
fishing.
It's something to do to a degree with your own mindset.
Right. It's a shift in your own perspective, a light hypnotic state. This doesn't appear to be the case
Because
in this
it happened
case.
with everybody.
Right.
This couldn't be an individual case.
So that had to be some sort of actual energy shift if that was the case. That was affecting a bunch of people, not just one person who happened to be in that frame of mind.
And it's, something that would have stretched from Nevada to one end of Arizona all the way down to the other. That's a massive area for an energy shift like that to occur.
Yeah, there would have had to be something, there would have had to been something in the air that night, right? For that many people to have had the shift to be able to perceive.
So as a result, do you think it's more likely that what this was something more physical rather than energy based?
That's difficult to say when reporting agencies aren't necessarily being honest about what they're reporting. Like if they're saying they're not getting anything on radar, then, you'd think something that had enough of a physical presence to be there would show up on radar. But then again, maybe they're not being honest about their radar, right?
Yeah.
Like it's when the reporting agencies aren't necessarily being clear or honest about what exactly transpired, it's hard to make any kind of determination on that. I think it's possible that it was something physical and that for whatever reason, something failed. And for a moment there, it was visible and then disappeared because it's whatever the mechanic got down to engineering and somebody called Scotty and they got it figured out, right? That's certainly possible.
Right.
It actually makes more logical sense than
the official explanation.
So
yeah, I tend to concur on that.
And I think lots of people are capable of actually recognizing that. People are not as dumb as the authorities or as, they think they are. When something doesn't sound right.
It's kind of like, again, as I was mentioning, the whole situation with the drones over New Jersey, where people are reporting seeing all of these like low flying, like large SUV sized drones flying over their houses left and right, flying over key critical infrastructure, and official explanations from the government range from just FAA testing of drones to, it was just planes. People are misidentifying planes and stars.
So there was a lot of SUV-sized planes and stars and other drones, private drones, FAA testing of drones. And this is all happening over large populated civilian areas where, people are going to notice. But, again, I think people are more capable of realizing when something doesn't sound right than they think they are. And it's just, for many people, it's easier to believe whatever the official explanation is and write it off and move on with their lives. The contemplating the mysteries of the universe is not for everyone. Some people are more interested in their cup of coffee and whatever their meeting is today. And
you got your 9 to 5 to focus on.
You got your 9 to 5ers out there. You do. And that's valid. It's fine if that's... I don't imagine many people watching this are the 9 to 5ers if they're interested. They're probably because they're clicking on it, right? The algorithm brings you things you're interested in. But there are those people who don't want to think about it. It's too much for them. They want to focus on what they're doing in their physical life, and the mysteries of the universe aren't for them.
I sometimes get the distinct feeling that even if a very much Independence Day style giant craft just flew over New York, you get some people who would look up and be like, holy crap, it's a UFO. But most people will be like, yeah, but I got work tomorrow.
Yeah, I need to go to the grocery store because I'm out of diapers. So we got
other things to worry about.
I'm sure I'll check the internet later and they'll tell me what this is. Yeah. So, and then you could have something like that happen. And, we live in the era of fake news and and all kinds of video editing techniques, and the lines between what's real and what's not are blurring anyway for people.
But that's a topic for a whole different video, that one.
Yeah, right. It's a big issue, and it affects how people view things like that. Anybody could be lying. Anybody could be looking for attention. Anybody
can use AI to mock up any kind of video they want. So.
Anybody can, yeah.
And the untrained eye isn't going to necessarily be able to tell the difference.
Exactly. So I think with as frankly confusing as everything has become from a data standpoint, sometimes we have to reconnect to and relearn our own discernment, right? To boil it down to what makes sense. Is what they're saying actually making sense with what we know they would actually do? You boil it down to your own discernment.
Because it gets ever more difficult to sort out fact from fiction.
Yeah. And I think that that's living in the modern era period. Is that phone number that's calling you a telemarketer? You've got to use your discernment, right? Is it safe to put my information into this website and not that website? I don't know. You got to use your discernment. Are the people you're watching on videos pulling your chain, or are they authentic in what they're saying? It's all discernment anymore. You know what I mean? When the facts fail,
you rely on intuition.
You have to be able to look at it and say, yeah, that don't make sense to me.
Makes sense, yes.
So anyway, that's what I got on that one.
All right, then. Oh, I think that's it.
Phoenix Lights. Check it out. Look up some documentaries. It's some pretty interesting stuff.
Indeed.
Everyone from governors to Kurt Russell. Why did I almost said Russell Crowe?
Different set of Russells.
Different Russells. Too many Russells.
One's got the Russell up front. The other one's got the Russell in the back.
Okay. And on that note,
have a good day, folks.
Like, subscribe, all that fun stuff, and we will see you next time on Unraveling the Unexplained.